Greetings everybody. The other day I was asked about how we roll over the toes as we move through our Vinyasa practice. And I realized that this was something I had simply heard in class but was never actually taught. So hopefully I can provide you with a few tips today on how to do this. Remember that rolling over the toes is a really safe movement. But bear in mind that if you've had any toe injuries or you've broken toes or if you experience any pain while doing this, just continue to flip your feet as you move through the practice. As we move through our Vinyasa, there are 2 points at which we would roll over the toes. The first one being as we come from Chaturanga Dandasana into upward facing dog, and then again as we move from upward facing dog into downward facing dog. So why would we roll over the toes as opposed to flipping the feet? First of all, know that there's absolutely nothing wrong with flipping your feet. Rolling over the toes just omits a few extra movements and adjustments and therefore makes the flow a little bit more fluid. The first time we roll our toes is when we move from Chaturanga into upward facing dog. Ideally, we want to have a strong Chaturanga off the knees before we start worrying about rolling over the toes, because it does require quite a bit of strength where we push the weight from the feet into the arms. We need to be able to drive the weight forward, support ourselves with our arms to open up into a nice upward facing dog. So let's work through Chaturanga into upward facing dog. So it's really important to note that when I do come into my Chaturanga and into my upward facing dog, I don't simply roll over my toes. So from my plank position, I shift my heart slightly forward, so I press through the feet. I lower into Chaturanga. Now if I was to simply roll over the toes from here, I'm quite compressed in my lower back and my shoulders tend to want to scrunch up at my ears. So what I need to do instead is to come through Chaturanga, send my feet slightly back to then press through. Now I'll find that my shoulders are nicely stacked above my wrists. I'm less compressed in my lower back and my shoulders are nicely away from my ears. Now when I want to go into downward facing dog from my upward facing dog, I'm not simply going to roll over my toes, letting the weight dump into my feet, but rather I lead from my hips and I press into my arms so that I'm quite light on my toes. So I press through the balls of my feet and I start to lift my hips up and rolling over the toes. I should now be set in quite a nice position in my downward dog. However, if I do feel a little far from my hands, I can adjust and walk my feet in slightly closer to my hands. Thank you for joining me. I hope that this short tutorial has provided some clarity on how to roll over the toes as we move through our flow. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments.